Hi guys, and welcome to my live masterclass all about insecurity, what it is, where it comes from, and how to start transforming it. So, before I do any kind of coaching session, masterclass, workshop, anything where I am giving and sharing my service and my skills, I always like to ask for what is meant to happen. So, to ask for the aligning of the energy for anybody that's going to be watching or benefiting from it, to check in with the universe to make sure that what I say is going to be correct and what they need to hear at that time. So I just want to set that intention now, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching the recording, that you will get what you need to get and you will hear what you need to hear from this session today, and that the higher purpose is always being served. So, insecurity, it can show up in lots of different ways. And the ways that I see it show up the most for people in their relationships is through neediness. So, our behaviour might change and we might be a bit clingy and needy. We might sort of over message or constantly look to someone for reassurance and wanting to be touched and held. It can show up as avoidant. So we push people away, you might step back, you might avoid being around them, avoid certain conversations, stay very quiet. That's another way that insecurity can show up. It can show up in sabotage. So this might be where you are actually actively sabotaging the relationship because that part of you feels so uncomfortable and afraid and insecure that it feels that you would be better off without that relationship. So forms of sabotage could be fighting or attacking, creating a fight with your partner. It could be cheating. It could be just not really being yourself and creating some sort of drama or pain that ultimately pushes that person away, or with the intention of pushing that person away. Now, these things aren't conscious, and there's obviously different levels to it and different levels that we all experience at different times. But kind of what I want you to know really is that everybody on the planet feels insecure about something at some times, because you cannot be human and not feel that. And so let's explore where it really comes from then. I'm going to keep this in the area of relationships, but you can apply it to any area of your life really. And what happens as we're growing up, we are experiencing our parents or our guardians and the way that they interact with us and the way that our environment is. And through that, we are exploring and learning, do I matter? And how to get our emotional needs met. We are all at our core wired for, or to need, or to want, or to seek belonging, love and belonging. And so as soon as we arrive on the planet, we are then searching for that sense of love and belonging. And what we realise and what we met with is our parents or guardians, or people that were around, behaving in different ways towards us, which helps us to sort of decide what works and what doesn't work to get our emotional needs met. So because your parents, and this isn't about throwing your parents or guardians under the bus, this is about understanding human behaviour, because they had their own baggage and their emotional needs weren't met possibly in the way that they need when they were growing up, they don't know how to properly be able to give that to you. And even if they did, even if they were modelled really, really healthy parenting and healthy ways of getting your emotional needs met, we still need to learn how to do that for ourselves in order to be able to thrive and be really healthy in this area. Because when we look for it from other people, they can never fully give it to us because they've got their own stuff and they need to be able to meet their own needs as well. And so what happens is we pick up these ideas of I matter, or I get my emotional needs met in this way, this way, this way, and I don't matter, or I'm not good enough when I do this, this, and this, as in a general sense. And so then what happens is this conditioning happens from 0 to 7, and then we go out into the world as we start growing up and we become a teenager and we start trying to explore who we are. We move away from trying to get those emotional needs met from our parents, although we do still do that in other ways, and we move towards trying to get those needs met through a partner, through a romantic relationship. And we are often met with pain and struggle. And this then causes us to attach meaning to how those people behave around us and towards us, and to think that that then means something about us, that we might not be good enough and that we might be unlovable. And it starts to, in our subconscious, form these stories and these beliefs about ourselves. And that then plays out in our adult life, in our relationships, and we label it insecurity. You could also label it fear, self-doubt, and when I talk about relationship anxiety, it fits in with insecurity, really. It's a very similar, it's pretty much the same thing, just at different levels. You could have insecurity that was 10 out of 10, which could be presenting itself as a full-on anxiety disorder in the area of relationships. Or you could just have a little bit of insecurity where you get a little bit of doubt every now and then. So it's all a level, but we all experience it. So that's the first thing, I guess, to know and to take from this, is that you are human, it is normal, and you're working on it. You wouldn't be watching this video if you didn't recognise that you had some insecurity and maybe it wasn't serving you anymore. Because here's the thing, and here's how we can start to overcome it, is to be able to see that actually that was necessary. So if you think back to your childhood and how you got your emotional needs met, and when you felt that you maybe weren't safe or loved. So what you did or what might have happened when you felt that you weren't enough. If you'd have then tried to do the opposite, I'm going to give you an example because it's quite hard to explain, then it might not have worked out for you. And so we repeat that when we're older. So a really good way to explain this is using my own experience. So growing up, my experience, and it's really important to be able to say that it's your experience of your parents, not actually your parents, because we can never truly know someone else's experience. They can even tell us, and we can never truly know their experience because it's filtered through our own values and beliefs and experiences. So my experience of my parents growing up was that my mother was quite needy towards me and wanted me to make her happy. And so I took on this story and this identity of, I'm here to please you. And there was a lot of energy and a lot of codependency there. And then my relationship with my dad was very different. He, in my experience, was quite avoidant, didn't really engage with me. And so as a child, I learned that I might not be enough because my dad doesn't want to spend time with me and doesn't acknowledge me. And also I'm here to please and I'm here to make someone else happy. So then as I went out into my relationships, I would attract in a partner those qualities. Someone that every now and then was very avoidant, didn't share their feelings or didn't connect with me on that level, because that was my experience of my dad. But also I would then try to please, try to make them happy, and lose a part of myself in that process, rather than sort of sitting and doing what sat right with me. And so that's kind of how it play as an example of how it plays out. And so when you can look back and I can see, well, actually, if back then, as a child, I'd have tried to change my behaviour. So I would have stopped trying to please my mum and totally started to self-express and have conversations with my dad about his avoidance, and that I felt dismissed, and starting to acknowledge and give myself what I needed. If I'd have done that as a child, what would have happened? I wouldn't have fitted into the family system. I wouldn't have got the love and belonging that we are wired to seek when we're a child. So those behaviours that we pick up, even though they're not beneficial when you recognise as an adult, they were kind of necessary as you were growing up. And what you've recognised now is those behaviours and those stories have now transformed into insecurity, because you're still looking for love in the same ways and still behaving as you did or in line with those stories that you came up with as a child, and they don't work anymore. So the first step to really healing this is seeing that these behaviours and these feelings come from a wounded inner child, your past experiences, and actually there was nothing wrong with you then. It was just necessary. It was necessary for you to be able to feel and believe that in order to get your emotional needs met, to fit into your family system. And when you can transform the energy from shame, from there's something wrong with me, to that was necessary, that's when you create space to start to change this whole experience of insecurity. So that's the first step. And if you want some help with this, definitely reach out. I know it's difficult. Hopefully you've got something from me talking, but it is difficult to uncover your own stories on your own. I know from my experience that I wasn't able to really understand and deeply transform these without a coach there to reflect back to me. But it's your own journey, so it's whatever sits right for you. And then it's just really start to accept and embrace the way that you show up when you're feeling insecure, and actually accept it. And I don't mean accept it in that it's fine, nothing needs to change. I mean accept that it's come from past pain, and to have a little bit of compassion towards yourself, that it's okay that you've behaved that way, because you haven't learned how to behave any other way. It's not been modelled to you. And that is my intention as a coach as well, to be able to model to you and help you learn better ways. But for now, to be able to accept that that's how you've learned to get your emotional needs met, that these are the stories that you've picked up along the way that used to serve you, even though they're not now, that also then helps you create the space to be able to change that story. And to be able to see that it was necessary, but you can welcome in a new story. And that takes time and work. Of course it does, because often these things are quite deep rooted. So the next thing is to look back at your past relationships and back at that past pain and do a similar thing. Can you transform the energy of that away from it was my fault, there must be something wrong with me, I must be unlovable, to that was necessary and we both came together because that energy was matched and we had something to teach each other. So whether somebody cheated on you, whether you've been left over and over, whether you have been told out of the blue that you're not loved anymore or there's something wrong with you, to look at that experience and instead of taking that on and letting it feed that anxiety and that insecurity, look at it from a fresh perspective of actually that was their experience and their experience is not about you, and you have absolutely no control over that, because like I said, all human beings have insecurities, and so that person has filtered their experience through their own baggage and their own insecurities and what those things mean to them. And so you can't really control any of that. And so if someone behaves like that towards you, it's necessary for you to be able to take those lessons and to see what you don't want, essentially, and what is important to you and how you would like things to be differently. They act as a mirror. So even though I had a lot of past relationships that were painful, that were not happy and healthy, those benefited me because they were reflecting back to me and showing to me more of me, the insecurities that needed to be healed. They were shining a light on them if you're willing to look. And that's the next step, to just be open, to be willing to look and to start to heal those stories and that baggage. So please share what you got from this, if anything. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much, guys. Lots of love.